Welcome back, everybody, to Cellar Dwellers podcast, where we're talking about movies and all that good stuff. We got Christian here sitting across from me.
What's up?
Today, we figured that we would continue part of the conversation that we started in Christian's Top 10, Part 1. And today, we're going to start talking about Star Wars. But, we're gonna spread it out a little bit so it's not all bunched into one episode. We're going to start talking about Star Wars in the original trilogy, 4, 5, and 6, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, I think it was funny, it was really unexpected, that part of the podcast was my, top 10 movies, 10 through 6, bottom 5, and the longest part of that episode was our Star Wars discussion.
I think after I edited it ended up being 20 minutes or something.
Yeah, and it was a very, it was, like I said, so unintentional. I did not plan for that. I don't think planned for it, and we had a really good discussion. I think we kind of both, took away from that, we could. And we already knew we were going to talk more about Star Wars, but there's just so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Especially considering I got you in the franchise involved.
You did.
So I'll always take credit for that. But no, it was, it was a great discussion on my favorite movie, one of my favorite movies of all time, and favorite Star Wars episode, obviously, with Empire Strikes Back, and kind of just led to a lot of other things about the other episodes, the whole genre itself. So we just kind of decided it'd be a good idea to talk about basically just the original trilogy and, plan other episodes down the line.
Because it's such an extensive topic.
Right.
Franchise.
We figured, we'll probably do a prequel episode, then we'll do a sequel trilogy episode. Unfortunately, yeah. And then, even a current state of Star Wars, where they're at right now, where they're going, where we want them to go. All that good stuff. But today...
Maybe when, Book of Boba Fett or something comes out.
Yeah. Which I'm excited for.
I
know you're not, but
I mean, it's whatever. I mean, it's fine. It's happening. I'll watch it.
It was great. He was great, I thought, in Mandalorian season 2.
It's not the Skywalker, so I'll watch it.
Yeah, but yeah. So I think we can just obviously hop right into A New Hope. Obviously, the original Star Wars just was titled Star Wars, and they didn't get the title till after I think Empire came out, and when George Lucas obviously was planning for a trilogy. You said something which I thoroughly 100% agree with, how influential this movie was.
Yeah.
Just its impact on the whole space, sci-fi, all that genre in general, really.
Nerd fandoms.
I mean, it just, there's so much, so much stuff in that movie that other creators, directors took away from. And, like I said, it's just insanely influential.
But I mean, you have to consider that movie also took inspiration from other forms of media.
Well, right. The biggest thing being was 2001: A Space Odyssey. George Lucas was enamored by that, as so many people were. I mean, the frigging special effects. If you haven't seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, I mean, you have to see that.
Quick side note: 2001: A Space Odyssey is the second best space movie to come out in 1968.
I guess I would disagree, but
do you know what
I know the first one is for you, Barbarella.
It's Barbarella.
Yeah. That'll be a fun episode. But no, that movie, my God, I mean, I showed you that movie and you were I just think, mesmerized by, the effects for that time. It's just...
Visually, if nothing else.
Right.
2001: A Space Odyssey is unreal. I mean, it's just people joke about, oh, Stanley Kubrick shot that movie in space. But, no, I think he actually might have, because it looks so good.
I think that there's definitely some cred to that. He could have been involved in the fake moon landings.
Yeah.
I mean, if he could do that, just literally
it's a slow burner though.
Yeah,
it's a slow burner.
And it's I think a lot of people sort of it has some kind of pacing issues. I don't think so, but it does sort of drag on and has so many great, interesting concepts, because Kubrick is famous for putting stuff in his movies for people to find out and pick at and.
I think towards the end, when it gets kind of experimental and existential,
right?
I can see where it could drag a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe on a first watch, but I feel on a second or third watch, when you kind of know what's happening and what's going on, you can appreciate.
We'll definitely, again, we always get off track with all these episodes. Yeah. We'll definitely have a Kubrick episode, or even just a 2001 episode, because he's my favorite director, as you know. But yeah, back to New Hope, like we said, just...
A New Hope is much more linear,
right,
than
for
2001.
Sure. George Lucas definitely garnered so much inspiration from that film. Obviously, he did that movie American Graffiti too.
Yeah, my dad loves that movie.
Yeah, really good movie. So you kind of know he has a certain style, and when you think of it, like on again a basic level, Star Wars is such like a different kind of odd, very strange type of film in the sense that it's like just how it starts, right? A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. People like right there, it's like what, what does that even?
Well, it's
mean?
ironic because it's so futuristic. Like you see the things and the technology that they use in Star Wars, and you kind of assume like, all right, distant future, apocalyptic Terminator type deal, and then it's like, no, long time ago. Like, oh,
and
okay.
Of course, like scientific sci-fi, space travel, space exploration films, that was like a big thing, especially in the 70s, 60s.
60s, 70s, yeah.
So it wasn't nothing new, but it just was like these guys literally, you don't find out till Luke meets Obi-Wan and you see the lightsaber, but it's like these guys are wielding freaking huge like lighters pretty much that can chop. It's like such an odd idea, and I can kind of see how for some people's first viewings that wouldn't be interested in that genre, like say we went and saw a movie that you were not interested in that genre, like you'd probably like, this is kind of like a very odd movie, but I think with time it just got better, obviously, and was so influential and just such a well done, well shot film.
I will say, last semester of school, I had to watch that movie for one of my American cinema classes to watch Star Wars, and I told my mother that I was watching it. I said, "Do you want to come watch it?" She's like, "No, I don't like Star Wars." It's like, all right, we'll watch it anyway. And she watched it, and she, at the end of the movie, she was not quite blown away, but I remember her saying something to me along the lines of, "Oh, I didn't think it was going to be that good. I don't remember that stuff being in it. I don't remember the movie talking about that stuff." So even my mother, who watches almost exclusively holiday Hallmark films, likes Star Wars.
Yeah. I mean, I think it does a great job. Yeah, I always say this, when a film can like suck you in and just maintain your interest throughout, it's like done its job. I think Star Wars does that like times 10. At least for me it did.
Yeah. I agree with you, definitely.
Even like my dad, like who doesn't really care for that genre as well, he loves A New Hope. He always says like, that's my favorite one, that's my favorite. He's like, the other ones are very good, but that was his favorite one. And the originality of it, obviously I can understand it being a lot of people's favorite movie, because it's just it is very like a basic premise, like right, this galactic civil war is kind of going on. You read the opening crawl,
the opening crawl too, just
right, something so unique.
It's like it's like the wipe transition now.
Yep.
It's so synonymous with Star Wars.
Well, that's what Lucas did. He started a lot of those wipe transitions in A New Hope.
So now whenever you see it in any other movie that's not Star Wars, you immediately go back to Star Wars. Yep. Like wipe transition.
But yeah, I mean, we all know how it starts. Like Princess Leia gives R2-D2 the Death Star plans to how it's
help me, Obi-Wan,
destructible and stuff, and trying to reach out to Obi-Wan. And there's a funny thing in Star Wars, like about to shoot them, and it's like, what are we paying by the laser now? He's like, you don't do the budgetary, I do. But a lot of people say it's true. Again, you can nitpick any movie's plot, but it's like, to think of it like if they just blew up that that ship that was carrying C-3PO and R2, you have no Star Wars.
Roll credits.
Movie's
over.
But yeah, so then they get to Tatooine, they come across Luke and Uncle Owen Amperu, Moisture Farmer, and
which is such a weird concept that you don't even need to think about.
Right, the blue milk and and everything. It's like it's so unique and so cool and just so interesting. Again, it's like we kind of like grew up obviously in an era like we already knew about Star Wars culturally, so it's like we didn't find it as, I guess, like being in awe because we knew sort of what to expect. Like you knew about it. By the
time, this is gonna probably hurt some people listening, by the time you and I were old enough to know what Star Wars was, I think all the prequels were already out.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So
I mean, I gotta think. I feel like the first one I saw was probably Revenge of the Sith. And then I like went back and watched the other prequels, and then I saw parts of the original trilogy, when they'd be on TV and stuff, and I like really liked it, but it did, again, compared to the prequels, it obviously did seem a little dated. And it's like not till I got older I realized how obviously far superior the original trilogy story plot is, like way more than the prequels. Prequels had some some good points, but talk about them in another episode. Back to like A New Hope. I love that shot of the binary sunset on Tatooine when Luke comes out
right at the beginning.
Towards the beginning, yeah. When he comes out, of his house, and he's standing, over the ledge there, and he's just looking, and I've heard this, so it's like it's not my original thought, but it's so true. It's like it's almost like his destiny is fate, right? Like he aspires to be more. He wants to become a pilot, wants to join the rebel cause, wants to get off this rock, as he says. Like he knows he's meant for more. Right, like, and that's something it's something very relatable too, like people that kind of stuck in a rut in their life, and they have, their family expects them to join a family business, like Owen expects them to stay and be a moisture farmer, and it's like, and Bruce says he's not a farmer, he's just like his father, and he's like, that's what I'm afraid of, and so it's like hints that obviously, Darth Vader down the line.
But at that time, you don't even know what that means.
Right, exactly.
It's more or less just like a throwaway line kind of thing.
Again, there's so many great things dialogue wise they put in that make so much sense later, and they build up to something great.
One thing I will mention while he's still on Tatooine, I was talking actually to Kyle about this the other day. I forget what we were talking. I think we were talking about like you and I doing this episode, and I was like, refresh my memory. Why do they call Obi-Wan Ben? And Kyle said something like, well, he goes to Tatooine and he's like, I gotta hide from Darth Vader, so I'll change my first name to Ben. Right. And he's like, it's the same thing when Luke goes to Tatooine and he finds the message. He's like, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's like, I don't know an Obi-Wan, but I know a Ben. Do you think they're related?
Again, I always go back to Family Guy because they depict this perfectly. He goes, this is for Obi-Wan, a message for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he goes, oh, I wonder if he means old Ben Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's just so funny. Like there is so many like things you can kind of point at and laugh. Like that makes no sense again, especially once you find out Vader's, his father and Leia's his sister and stuff, and it's like, how wouldn't he realize that he got sent to his, like, Anakin's mother's husband's house? Like that's where it was, and it's like the last place he thought he'd look, and Obi-Wan is there, and I don't know. This is, you can question a lot, but topic discussion for another day. But
if I were Obi-Wan and I wanted to get away from the Empire, I would have gone to the farthest reaches of the galaxy.
Yeah.
Like, don't go to the one place where Darth Vader is going to look for his kid, even though he never looks there.
Well, I mean, that's what Luke says to 3PO, I believe. He's like, if you're looking for fun or something or action, you're on the furthest planet from it.
Yeah.
I guess it's the outer rim, so it's Tatooine, I think, is away from everything. All the action. So maybe it does make sense. Of course, and then after that, you start meeting the characters. He goes and gets attacked by the Sand People, and Obi-Wan saves him. You see that like weird, like some native dragon voice or something he does, and of course, so we'll talk about later how to get changed later on the line because George Lucas wanted to change and go back and make friggin' stupid edits that were just so unnecessary. But yeah, so then you meet Obi-Wan Kenobi, then go to Mos Eisley, you meet Han and Chewie.
Who shot first?
Obviously Han.
Thank you.
Everyone knows that.
That's something we got to talk about.
Yeah,
Han Solo.
Of course. But yeah, so it's like at that point, it's like once they leave Tatooine, it's like the movie really picks up and gets going for sure.
It's like introduction over. Here we go.
Right.
Get into it.
Because it's like you briefly see and know who Princess Leia is, so she's already introduced without really being fully on screen because that's their mission. They're trying to save her. You
can assume that she has some sort of importance.
Yep.
Based on how she was speaking in the message when she gives it to R2-D2. And even more so, I think shortly after that, R2-D2's talking to C-3PO, I think.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, we should hide. And R2-D2 does like his beeping, and he's like, no, we gotta go. We gotta go find Obi-Wan.
Dude, R2 is fucking determined throughout this movie.
Oh my God,
he doesn't give a shit.
R2 is the rock that holds everyone down. I mean, without him, Star Wars would be nothing.
And the other thing, too, that I always find, like, it's sort of unexplained to me, is, like, obviously they make it so, they connect it, like, George Lucas obviously put this in the prequels because he controlled it, but at the end of Revenge of the Sith, what's his face? The Senator Amidala, or whatever.
Amidala?
The Princess Leia's father from Alderaan.
Amidala.
He tells Captain Antilles, who he's like, have the droid's memory wiped. So they obviously forget about Anakin, forget about Obi-Wan and stuff. Right. And it's like, when Obi-Wan sees R2, it's like, and he's like, hello there. Like,
hello there.
it's like, does he know who those droids are? I mean, they were pretty significant in his life, like especially once you watch the prequels, how like major R2-D2 is, and like saving them multiple times.
Well, that's the problem with prequels.
Yeah, but it's just something I'm always like, I don't know. But then there's like theories he had PTSD from the Clone Wars and stuff. So there's so many things you could just go down the rabbit holes. But yeah, I always thought that was interesting. I'm like, maybe he does know, because the other thing, obviously, you find out.
Yeah.
He obviously knows Anakin Skywalker is Luke Skywalker's dad. Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader, and he keeps it from Luke because he, knows he probably wouldn't be able to handle it then. Obviously.
At that point, honestly, like if you get to the point where Obi-Wan gives Luke the lightsaber, and he says, "Oh, it belonged to your father. Your father's Darth Vader." Luke Skywalker would probably be like, "Okay,
yeah,
who's Darth Vader?"
Right? Yeah, I mean, that's the other interesting thing. I'm like, the Empire is so big and like looming. You never really know how like well known certain like the Emperor is, or Darth Vader. It's like, does everyone know about them, or do they?
Well, because they seem more like shadowy figures that pull strings behind the scenes.
Yeah.
While you have like senators and generals doing all the stomping on planets, like even in Rogue One,
and all the stormtroopers saying, "Show me your identification."
Yeah, even in Rogue One, when they go hunt down, I think, is it Mads Mikkelsen's character, Geonosis' father?
Yes.
Like it's not Darth Vader that goes to do that.
Right.
They send one of the generals. Of
course, obviously.
So I feel like Darth Vader or the Emperor wouldn't be like well known, as you put it, among the galaxy.
Yeah. Something interesting I always thought of. I guess sort of on a side, you sort of like disagree with this, what I'm going to say. Not really. I don't think you like enjoyed how they did it, but something I really like, just even in A New Hope, in the one film, forget about his development throughout all three movies, but Han Solo's kind of quick and interesting character development in A New Hope is really cool. And very well done, and makes him like such a redeemable guy. He's still like a smuggler at heart, and like doesn't screw around, but he realizes like there's bigger things, bigger causes than himself. And obviously leads to the events of, he kind of forgets about the bounty on his head by Jabba the Hutt, and leads to his inevitable demise in episode 5, when he gets frozen carbonite.
Temporary demise.
Right. But yeah, it's just, I thought that was like so well done, and especially like how much of a badass like Western style like part it is when
he's like a space Clint Eastwood.
Right, when they're in the cantina, and like the Greedo tracks him down. It's like, you owe a debt and all this, and threatening him and all, and he just blasts him and kills. It's like no fucks given. Then walks out and goes, "Sorry about the mess." Flips the coin. That's Han Solo, and I think he never loses that side. I just think he slowly realizes again the rebel cause.
I think he loses that side.
I don't think he fully does.
I think it really dims. I think we need to talk about Han Solo for a couple minutes here. But the reason being is that Han Solo is such an interesting character in even just Star Wars, A New Hope. Mm-hmm. Because you're introduced to Luke in the beginning, and Luke is, somewhat a relatable character. He's like, just like the teenager that wants to go out, hang out with his friends, and fly his spaceships or planes or whatever on the sand dunes, and I was going to go to Tashi Station and pick up power converters. And he's like,
"Oh, time with your friends when your chores are done."
Yeah, he's all upset that he's got to, take responsibility. So then, after Owen and Beru get barbecued, he goes with Obi-Wan to find Han Solo.
Croak.
After they croak, yeah, that's right. After they croak, they go to find Han Solo, and I feel like Luke is so enamored with Han Solo, but also kind of weary of him, because obviously, like, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think they set out to find Han Solo specifically.
No.
I think they just needed somebody to take them.
Yeah, because they were gonna buy a ship, but they realized they couldn't, so they wanted to,
right. So it just so happened that they find Han Solo,
right.
Which narratively,
and that's why he accepts it. He's willing to do that because of the bounty on his head.
Because he needs money,
right?
So when they find Han Solo, he's this sort of irresponsible, no cares in the world, kind of fly by the seat of your pants character.
Yeah.
And he's not a good guy at the beginning when you meet him. He's just, not quite full of himself, but he only thinks about himself, Chewbacca, and the Falcon. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah.
And he just wants this bounty off his head so he can stop being hunted by Jabba the Hutt. as it continues, he kind of, I mean, like, I'm all for a character arc and, you know, developing personalities and everything. And I think that the development in New Hope is honestly fine. Because, I mean, he leaves at one point. He says, all right, screw you guys, have fun fighting the Empire.
Yeah, I guess that's what you're best for.
And then comes back. And he's like, you know, I thought, in not so many words, he basically says, I thought about it, I'm here to help. And that's great. That's all good and well. My problem with it, with Han Solo, comes later on in the movies, where, honestly, I think I'm with Harrison Ford in this one. Should have just offed Han Solo.
Wow.
Like, I love him, don't get me wrong, but there's so many, and it's not just Star Wars that does this. Like, it's so many franchises and films that they find one fan favorite character, and in the benefit of profit and money, they keep them around. But with the sacrifice of story and development. Like, how, I mean, it's hard to say because there are points in 5 and 6 that you just need Han Solo. And I'm not saying off him in episode 4, because you need that full development in episode 4 where he helps Luke and Obi-Wan for the money and then leaves and then comes back. You need that sort of development, but when you get to 5, if he gets frozen in carbonite, go send Harrison Ford to do the Indiana Jones movies and just say Han Solo died.
I think, you know, I've heard this a lot. You know, we've talked about this before, how Harrison Ford, like, not even, like, hated, like, despised playing Han Solo. Like, hated it.
Yeah,
like,
well, he wanted Han Solo to die in episode 4, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and then what I'm getting to is I think they sort of threw him a bone, for lack of a better term, like when he got frozen in carbonite, and he's probably thinking, "Oh, I'm done with this finally." Like, it was very odd to me. Like,
well, I
like
think that was like a safety net almost. Yeah. If he came back or if he didn't. If he did, obviously, which he did, they could unfreeze him. If he didn't, they could just leave him there.
As you said, I think he's the type of actor that, like, I don't think has a passion for acting. He's just gifted at it.
He's got a passion for money.
Right. He just loves fucking, you know, backing up the Brinks truck, cashing in the big check. Like, that's all he really cares about, which sucks. But, you know, it is what it is. But my God, if they played it off right and he maybe had some, like, sacrificial, like, death or something, or he went out really good, or it went out strong, I wouldn't, you never know how they could have played it.
Right.
But I think it's, like, perfect how they, you know, utilized him, and I think he was, like, a crucial part of the trilogy and, like, a big fan favorite. And especially, like, you know, he sort of had to develop into a hero, I guess, because
of course.
If not, he would not be, like, loved and renowned by so many people, and, you know, looked upon as such a kind of self-sacrificial, you know, person that just realizes, again, like I keep saying, there was a bigger cause. Obviously, the rebel cause is more important than his cause, and I kind of like that, because I don't know, I love sort of selfless people, like leaders, people, you know. I think I'm a big believer in, like, anyone can really change and stuff. So I don't know, I really enjoyed seeing that, and especially kind of how the audience, I feel like at the end of Empire, like, you had no idea if he was gonna, like, they were like, oh, he's not dead, so people had hope he was gonna, you know, come back, but who the hell knew? Like, people probably thought he was, like, gone, or at least, you know, again, had hope he was gonna come back. But yeah, I don't know, I get what you're saying, but I just think without him, it would not have been anywhere the high level success that it was.
Yeah, because Harrison Ford was a draw anyway.
Right.
But I think part of my problem of it stems from the fact that Disney and George Lucas have gone back 101 times and changed that scene in Mos Eisley Cantina.
Let's just talk about that, because that's, like, something we can get to.
Because to begin Han Solo's arc of anti-hero to hero, you need to have that initial spot of anti-heroism.
Right.
Where if he shoots first, if he shoots Greedo, no remorse. All right. Like, that's it. Guy is just acting for his own volition and for his own benefit. But if you have Greedo shoot first, Han dodge, and then Han shoot in retaliation, that's self-defense, and that doesn't really tarnish your reputation as much. So I think if they had just kept it as the original Han shot first, his arc of anti-hero to hero would have been so much more believable and endearing, even if even regardless of his fate at the end of Empire.
So I read and heard Lucas's rationale for changing that was he wanted kids to see Han as like a good guy and a hero. And again, my counter to that would be exactly what you just said. That is where his like character development that you fucking created started.
Right.
He started like you're like, this guy doesn't fuck around. He doesn't give a shit. He's in it for the money, as he says. He's in it for himself. He doesn't care. And then guess what? Throughout the other two films and, you know, the rest of A New Hope, he changes his ways sort of. He develops. It's a great, you know, transformation of character. But by doing that, like you said, like you just ruin it. And I don't, again, when I was a kid and watched the prequels and stuff, I didn't know or fully understand or really give a shit about the plot. I just loved all the friggin' scenes with Anakin and Obi-Wan. Space fights and slicing the droids and stuff and then fighting each other. I think that's all kids care about.
Yeah.
They don't care about plot and character development. That's for like... And
it's nerds like us.
It really pissed so many people off, and rightfully so. And it's such a shame, man, that like now that Disney owns it, they've only gone back and made it worse.
Yeah.
Because in the recent, the Disney Plus edition, instead of just having Greedo shoot first and having that terrible, like, dumb CGI neck, like, just looks so fake and dumb, they literally added a shot after it was like, I bet you he says, I bet you have, and he goes, Makoki, or something in his language.
Yeah, like he says something to...
and I'm just like, that
instigate.
Is so fucking stupid. And then it's like, then they show that like 2-second shot, and then they still go back to the 2-shot, him shooting, Han shooting, and the neck movement. I'm like, give us the theatrical releases, Disney, on Disney Plus, the original as they were meant to be, as everyone views them as.
It's not even a matter of leaving well enough alone. It's just a matter of just going back on it, changing characters.
Like, and then it's just so distracting when he like all those dumb big fat lizards on Tatooine and just that, and then in Return of the Jedi, that stupid ass fucking scene with that dumb lizard, get the bug guy and the lizard lady singing, like that's all that. I'm just like, he literally said this again. He's like, back then I could never make the movie I really wanted to because I'm like, what are you talking about?
This is what you wanted to make?
Yeah, like you created such a, like, arguably I would say the best trilogy, the best franchises ever.
Yeah.
And it's like you did it in such a time where you didn't have, you know, all those tools and technology to go further. And
which should serve as its own merit itself.
Right. And it's like, it was perfect as it was. Like, the fact that they haven't released, at least on Blu-ray, the original theatrical releases of the original trilogy is fucking mind-boggling to me. The amount of money they would make off that, or even if Disney Plus had some promo where you bought it, it's just, that has to get done. It really does. It's like sad people have to go back to the VHS versions, which is like great, but again, it doesn't look as clean or as good as it could be. You know?
But you know, what can you do? It just sets I think editing a movie like that post-release can set a dangerous precedent.
Yep.
Because like if you make a movie and you put it out in the theater, the audience I think has some sort of right as a consumer to assume that that's the finished product. Mm-hmm. And if you just go back and say, oh, I wasn't done, I just needed to release something, that's like me doing my homework the period before and just turning it in whatever.
And you know what, the reasoning I think he mainly did this, it was not because it wasn't his vision or what he wanted. It was to gain more popularity, because you know when he did all these edits was 1999, 97, 99, right before the Phantom Menace came out, right before the prequels came out.
Yeah, to generate new interest in Star Wars.
That is all he wanted to do and all he cared about, and obviously to make money off re-releases and stuff. And it's like, again, I think that just left a bad taste in so many people's mouths.
Oh, for sure.
And when you think of it, I think, you know, I can't definitively say this, but it's sort of just a developing, you know, take I have. Maybe like that's why some people like walked out of Phantom Menace. Again, not a great Star Wars film, but like they kind of saw they saw what George Lucas did to the original trilogy, and like, all right, you're going with this. You have fucking Jar Jar Binks like screaming and acting like a dumbass the whole movie just for kids to laugh at. I seriously think he pissed so many people off by doing that. And then, like, again, in the build-up to the prequels, too, like, people were so pumped for, and then those edits were already out. I think it was, like, 97 or something, because Phantom Menace, I believe, was 99 when it really was released. But it was like 97, 98, 99, right around there where he went back and did all those edits. And that's a great point. Like you said, it does set like a bad precedent. Because it's like, what's stopping people from...
Right.
Like we just saw last night in Soho, great movie. Like what's stopping Edgar Wright in 15 years to go back and make changes?
Because Edgar Wright has respect for himself and his work.
Right, but seriously, like I'm just saying, like you never know.
I know what you mean though. It's the same idea, especially with streaming services now, where you can just make a deal with like Warner Brothers, HBO Max said, I added a new scene to my movie, release it as a new one, and then everyone has to go see it again.
I would like to hope people are smart enough not to tamper with their original, work, considering how much people hate what Lucas did with the original trilogy. Yeah. End of Return of the Jedi. They throw in Hayden Christensen.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, okay, I get it. Like after you watch if you watch the prequel, like that's with me. Like I watched the prequels first because
you didn't know. It's one. By the time we knew what Star Wars was,
right,
it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yes, so that's how I watched them, and then I went back and like that's not how you're supposed to watch them. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Hayden Christensen's Darth Vader, but it's like, no, he's not. Sebastian Shaw was
right.
Darth Vader.
Right.
Again, George, like, what the fuck are you thinking? Like, it's like, I swear to God, he did a lot of this, dude, and just was like, people won't notice or care.
Well, because the thing is, right, if you assume that we're speaking strictly narratively here, mm-hmm. If you assume that Anakin Skywalker turns into Darth Vader, I mean, obviously he does at the end of episode 3, but then you assume that, let's say, 20 years have passed.
Even longer, probably.
25, maybe, 30, between the end of Revenge of the Sith and the end of Return of the Jedi. He's not still going to look like Hayden Christensen. Right. Yeah. Especially after going through all the burning and aging and everything.
Especially after... Literally 10 minutes before, Luke takes his fucking mask off to see him because Anakin wants to see his son with his own eyes. You're like, yeah, that's definitely Hayden Christensen, this old bald.
No, he just burned some of his hair off the top of his head.
I'm like, and again, it's like by that logic, why not throw Ewan McGregor in there as Obi-Wan? Like,
right, exactly. Exactly.
It's so dumb, and I'm like, I don't understand. Like, and it's in a like a. And it's not a good way, but it's like in a very strange way. It's like something unique because, like, again, thankfully, like, not many other people have gone back and have made this many edits. Like, sure, directors will go back and director's cuts show, cut scenes or something.
Yeah, but I think director's cuts are a little bit different because usually director's cuts add a lot more.
Right, they add, but I'm saying I think the only time directors or, movie studios, whatever, go back and change movies is like to kind of touch them up. Yeah. Make them look prettier. Maybe add, like I said, add some cut scenes that kind of add to that sort of fit well and don't take away. It's like these cuts, these edits, all these things he did took away from the original trilogy. It really did.
I remember the first time watching, I'm pretty sure it was A New Hope with the George Lucas edits. And I think I was in Kyle's basement actually. And my uncle had given us a VHS trilogy, but it was after the edits. Mm-hmm. And I remember watching it, and there was like one of those lizards. And I vividly remember thinking, that does not fit. That looks so unlike the rest of the movie. Just unnecessary.
And what's even more fucked is like, he like did this, right? He did it once. Like, I don't know. I can't tell you because I didn't care to look because it pisses me off to even like talk about this and think about it, but... He only continued to make more edits and changes and add more stupid CGI shit. Like, it wasn't just one set, dude. It was like 3 or 4.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it was over and over again.
And I'm like, it's just, like I said, I can't stress enough how dumb and unnecessary and just, like I said, it really just, it hurt the original trilogy.
Yeah. No, it did, definitely.
I will say, like, there's a couple things I do like. One being in episode 5, when you first see the Emperor. If you ever go back and see like the original Emperor, like it's like a puppeteer. Like it looks really like off and like kind of stupid.
Yeah.
And the fact that what's his name? Who's the guy that plays the Emperor? I'm forgetting the actor's name. But like he was already like casted, I think, I think they knew. Well, no, I can't say that, but like they could have just had him in that movie because he was obviously in Return of the Jedi.
Could be
right?
like the Avengers. Yeah, like at the end of the Avengers, they had Thanos, but it wasn't Josh Brolin.
Yeah, like I don't know. So I get that, but I do like how he changed it to being the Emperor that we all know, obviously in Return of the Jedi. And the other thing too that I liked was how they changed the voice of Boba Fett, like because the original guy that did it, I'm forgetting his name. I just like looked it up before. But he was like an older guy, and the voice didn't fit the suit. It was kind of like they tested with David Prowse's Darth Vader. They tested the voice and they were like, it doesn't match the suit. So they obviously
James Earl
Jones, who was unbelievable, and it just like makes all the sense in the world. It's like you think of Darth Vader, you obviously think of James Earl Jones. If you ever, it's funny. Like if you ever have time, look up on YouTube like David Prowse voice acting.
It doesn't fit. I mean,
and like Boba Fett,
nothing against David Prowse, but it just doesn't fit.
But Boba Fett, I think it was Timur Morrison. That's who I'm thinking of.
Yeah, Boba Fett, Jango Fett, all the clones.
Like his voice just perfect for like the clones and stuff, and Boba Fett obviously. So like I had no issue with that edit at all.
It's the stupid lizards.
Exactly. It's all the distracting, unnecessary, CGI additions that just, like I said, just took away from the film, and it was just distracting. And it was like, when you think of it too, it's just like of the timing of it, right? Like they're working obviously back then with all special effects because they didn't have CGI. So just how did anyone? And I'm sure people said it, but he didn't care because he had the final say. It's like. Mm-hmm. When you go back to a movie that was special effects, right? Like all special effects, and you throw in CGI, it's obviously not going to fucking look good.
No, of course not. Because it's going to look mixed. It's going to look somewhat unprofessional.
It's distracting.
Yeah. It's like, it's things like on Hoth. I think a lot of those scenes, especially with the AT-ATs, the big walkers, those were all miniatures. Those were all sets that they, probably like a foot tall. AT-ATs maybe. They did the same thing with Ghostbusters. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was like a foot and a half tall maybe. But I mean, those are the lengths you needed to go to at that time to make those movies.
And you can appreciate it.
Right, and obviously you're watching the movie, you can't tell, you don't know. It looks like they're 20 feet tall, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, then you throw in CGI mixing with special and practical effects that are so real, it doesn't match, and it looks like you just took two movies and mashed them together.
Right. Yeah. It just was unnecessary, unneeded. Like I said, I just hope they release on Blu-ray or at least, current updated screen versions of the original trilogy, the theatrical release. That's what I think everyone needs and wants.
You, me, and tens of thousands of other people.
Maybe millions. I don't even.
Probably.
We've kind of touched on Empire, but I guess sort of like moving on.
Talk about it a little bit again.
Yeah.
It's fine.
As I said in our discussion, obviously, because, it was my sixth favorite movie of all time. Again, list always fluctuates. I just love Empire Strikes Back. Just besides being a Star Wars movie, it's just such a great film.
It is.
But my biggest takeaway and something I loved, how like different it was from like the hero-based franchise movies was like, our heroes and the rebels, like, they just keep getting their ass kicked. Like
they're always on the back step.
Yeah, like literally, like the whole Hoth scene is like them trying to get on the transport ships and escape because the Empire found them and they're about to blow the shit up out of their.
Empire's here, honey. We gotta go.
Yeah, and like again, then it's like you see the betrayal in Bespin when they go to Cloud City and they you meet Lando Calrissian and you think everything's great and stuff, but the Empire got there first and they forced Lando and them to they made a deal with them, and it's like, what? You're like, are you fucking kidding me? And then of course it's like one of the other biggest kick in the balls is Han getting frozen in carbonite. You're like, what the fuck?
Because at that point you're watching the movie and you're like, oh yeah, he still owes that debt to Boba.
Right? Jabba the Hutt, right? And then it's like, fucking, you're like, oh, Luke versus Vader, this is cool, like, what's gonna happen? He gets his hand cut off.
Falls down a hole.
Yeah. And, but of course...
It's really just an unfortunate series of events for the Rebels, that entire movie.
It is, and, then it's, like, some of my other favorite parts is all the Dagobah stuff. The whole idea of the Force diving into the Force.
Dagobah's a classic scene with Yoda.
And I mean, like, Yoda, again, is just full of wisdom, and he has so much to give, and it's like, Luke is really, like, literally the last hope. And like you made a good point too, that I never even thought of, but it's so true. You said like Luke is like a sponge, right? He's just such like a quick learner, and obviously like he's gifted with the Force because of who his father is. Course. So it's like, you know, it's that dynamic between Luke and Yoda. It's just in kind of how Luke has so many different mentors that like throughout the original trilogy that like, again, leading up to like Darth Vader and stuff, and how he sort of comes to terms with him being his father and he tries to redeem him and all that. But with Yoda and stuff, it's like, I think he really opens his eyes to the idea of the Force, right?
Yeah.
The whole idea of it, how it binds everything, it surrounds us, it penetrates everything. It's just other entity, really, when you think of it. It's what keeps things going, what keeps things moving. And, you know, Jedi obviously have that ability to get in touch with it. But he's like, you can't, Yoda's whole teaching is this whole idea of balance of the Force, and really balance in life. And kind of just like a steady hand, like, you know, it's really like the whole yin and yang type of deal. Right. Which is,
I think that point right there is essential to Luke's character.
Yeah.
Especially towards the end of Empire and the entirety of Return of the Jedi. Because Luke is the kind of character that never says no to a new idea.
Mm-hmm.
He's always open to at least listening to it.
Yep.
And even more so listening, he's open to expanding upon that idea. So when Yoda tells him that the Force is balance. The Force is good and evil. It's light and dark. And you can't go too much light, can't go too much dark. You got to walk the line right in the middle. Luke doesn't say, no, I don't want to have any dark. He almost, in Return of the Jedi, he almost fully embraces the kind of pain and agony that Darth Vader is feeling as Darth Vader, and accepts that, and not accepts it to the point where he turns to the dark side, but accepts it to the point where he understands it enough to try and put that Yoda wisdom onto Darth Vader.
Well, what's great, like one of my favorite shots in Return of the Jedi, is after he's beaten the shit out of Darth Vader, he cuts his arm off.
Right.
He looks right at his arm. He like Luke looks right at his arm that got cut off, and he's like, what the hell am I doing? It's like this. I'm playing exactly into the Emperor's hands. I'm doing exactly what I'm not supposed to be doing. I'm attacking the wrong person.
Even more than that, though, he realizes he's leaning too much to one side.
Exactly. It's like it's such a realization that just, you know, it hits him like running straight into a wall.
But you couldn't have realized that you're leaning too far into the dark without leaning into the dark.
Mm-hmm.
So if he just stayed fully on light, let's say, I know this sounds stupid, but if he just stayed fully on light, then he wouldn't have fought back. He wouldn't have realized what he was doing was wrong.
Right.
So you needed that touch of dark in that interaction and that fight to realize that he's going too much to one side. And that's what brings him back to the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And in what helps him explain his reasoning to Darth Vader.
Yeah, it's like, again, besides just like the Force concept, I think there's a lot of like valuable life lessons to take away from that. Like, you can't really be too heavily on one side of the aisle with any really. You have to maintain balance with, you know, decision making and stuff, ideals, morals, all that stuff, because you can be consumed by like one side, and then it's like you never open to any change at all.
Yeah.
And Yoda says this in Phantom Menace, but it's like, it's so true. It's like, this is literally like the path of what Anakin did, like how fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. It's like, that line always sticks with me, because I'm like, I've seen different people and different things in life like kind of become consumed by like some negative thing that's going on. Like, no, you're smiling at me, but just like listen, and like you just become consumed by that one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know, like I said, it's just it's very true. And then obviously that is sort of a warning in Phantom Menace to Anakin, because like that's
which he does not heed.
Right, he doesn't. And again, it's like Luke kind of...
Anakin says, burn all the babies, and then...
Yeah, and it's like, again, like Luke, like again, like back to the idea of how he's like such a quick learner. He's very, adaptable.
It's not even that he's quick. It's just that he's willing.
I mean, but he just knows like you cannot lean too far on one side.
Yep.
The whole, the Jedi, the whole demise of the Jedi, Jedi Council, every Jedi was because they were so heavily leaned to like the light side.
Yeah.
They didn't realize what was happening right in front of them.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. And I think that this whole trilogy is obviously a story of Luke, from 4, 5 to 6. Everybody else is more or less secondary to him.
Mm-hmm.
However, obviously the prequels you get, Darth Vader, Anakin, the main character, sure. I don't think Star Wars needs the Skywalkers anymore. They've been beaten to death.
Yeah.
And there's only so many times you can go back to a story and say, but wait, there's more. Before it just gets to be like, all right, we've heard this. Like,
well, as you know,
get on with it.
I don't want to, because this is a great, topic for, another episode with the current state of Star Wars and stuff, but we're sort of in an era of film and television that's built on nostalgia,
Yeah.
And it's like trying to squeeze the last friggin' juice out of that, like, great fruit. Like, that's like what I feel like's going on in cinema, television, like I just said. And the same could be said with, the sequel trilogy, which, had its ups and definitely had its downs. But yeah, I agree. It's like, especially kind of how The Rise of Skywalker ended, I'm just like, all right, you know what? This was like fun. I'm glad I was along for the ride. Yeah. But as far as I'm concerned, Star Wars ended. Skywalker saga ended with Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. But I want to make a point of what you just said, because I think that was a really good topic to bring up. Modern cinema nowadays is a cinema of nostalgia.
Yeah.
And I 100% agree. I had a professor at UMass who, in one of his classes, always spoke about nostalgia. And, he'd ask the class, he's like, what is nostalgia? And someone would say, what he says? He goes, right, it's a longing or an interest for the past. And he says, but the part that everyone always forgets is the second half of the definition that says it's a longing or interest for the past, but with a dislike for the present. So it's assuming that there's something about the present, not necessarily that you hate, but you like what you had before better. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that is that it doesn't allow for any progress or development.
Right. Because
you're so focused on what you've already done or seen that you're not focused on what could happen. Yeah. Like, look at AMC theaters, right? They have all these new movies, they have like big blockbusters and everything, but the modern cinema, take Last Night in Soho for example, because we just saw that, it's labeled at AMC theaters as an artisan film. It's like, it's not really an artisan film. It is, but by that logic every movie is, because a filmmaker is an artisan who, like a master of their craft, whatever. But if you don't allow films like Last Night in Soho to sit and breathe and expand and have the time in the light that it deserves, all you're going to keep falling back on is another Star Wars movie, another Star Wars movie, another Marvel movie, another Star Wars movie.
Right. I love, there's so many things in my life that I find very nostalgic, and it's a great thing to have. But it would be better, like I always say with certain things, this is one of them, less would be more. You don't have to totally get rid of like nostalgic based films, like
No, and I'm not trying to say that, but
I know. But the biggest deterrent with nostalgia, when that's what you're focusing on for a film, is it kills creativity.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. And it's a creativity killer.
That's like, that's like what I just kept thinking with the sequel trilogy. It's just like, it really relied on the original trilogy. It's like, we're direct sequels to the original trilogy. This is exactly what happened at like 20 years or whatever it was after Return of the Jedi. This is exactly what happened. It just sucked because it definitely could have been better. They could have added to the Skywalker saga and done it differently. Again, topic for another day, as we always say here. Yeah. But, sort of
become like our motto now.
Seriously, it should be the name of our friggin' podcast. Jesus. Again, I love Empire Strikes Back. It's just, again, not only my favorite Star Wars movie, one of my favorite films of all time, and especially like we talked about too, we don't have to really go deep into this, but just like how like envious we were of the famous "No, I am your father" line. Like how like shocking and just amazing that must have been to like experience that. Like, again, I always tell you how awesome it was to see Empire, you know, in theaters. Like, I hope it comes around so we can, you know, you can sit there and see it, and it's just such a better experience, as you know.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Theaters. I never doubt it.
And it's like that scene too. I'm like, when that happened, I'm like, my God, like this just would have been awesome to be there in 1980 and just to witness that. And like, we compared it to like the uncomparable in terms of like, there's nothing in recent film that compares to that.
It's really not.
Big of a secret.
The "No, I am your father" twist. It's astounding. I mean, the level of shock and awe that 1980 audiences must have had.
Yeah,
is incredible.
We literally sat in the last one, try to think of, you know, a comparison, and there's just not one.
You can't.
But yeah, so I literally think that's, in so many ways, the perfect film. I just love how it ends on such an unknown. You're like, what the hell's to come? You know, and then what was to come was your favorite Return of the Jedi, which again I love. Like,
Jabba's palace right at the beginning, baby.
I think some people think, like, when I say Return of the Jedi is my least favorite of the original, like, I don't like it. I mean, I love Return of the Jedi. I think it's
three of these movies are masterclass.
I hate even like listing them, but like that's kind of what we do, right? Like, or else it'd just be no discussion, no point in talking about it. You'd be like, I love everything or I hate everything.
Right.
You know, like what I have here, you laughed when you read it earlier, but it's so true. I just love how Luke is such an absolute badass motherfucker. How when he just walks into Jabba's palace, it's like,
I'm here to collect my friends.
Everybody knows who it is, right? Because it's like Chewie. I mean, Chewie comes after, you know, with a debt.
But Leia's already there, isn't she?
She comes after that, I think. No, Leia is.
Yeah, because she comes dressed as the bounty hunter.
Right. So everyone's there. It's like, you know, Luke's gonna fucking come and save the day. He walks in those friggin' big, like, I always say because they all look like lizards. Those lizard guys with big teeth. They try to go up to him and he just force chokes both of them. Like,
oh. See ya.
You're like, well, Luke's come a long way as a Jedi.
He really has. Because this is what, like a full year or so after Empire?
Yeah, and you know, has a new look. The black robes, I think, suit him so well.
Slick as hell.
It's just, and the other cool thing too that I think of is, and it's something the filmmakers thought of, and I'm glad they didn't do this, but originally they were literally going to have Luke basically turn into Darth Vader.
Oh yeah, no, wasn't he going to put on the helmet?
Yeah, something stupid. And again, thank God. And I think that, I literally think Lucas wanted that, but you know, the other writers and directors of the film were like, no, like,
it would have just been almost like a retcon of the entire series.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I don't want to say it would have been a waste of time, but it would have basically been a waste of time.
Yeah, I always forget the guy that directed this, Richard Marquand, but I think him, you know, and a lot of the writers were like, yeah, we can't do that.
Because that would ruin the entire arc of Luke.
Right. Exactly.
And Vader at that point.
But no, but what I like about that, why I brought that up, is because it's like, it's sort of hinting out Luke is not always, you know, on the light.
Yeah, he's
because
not always goody two-shoes.
In the prequels, all the Jedi, you know, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan, obviously, Yoda, they all have like lighter Jedi robes or brown robes, you know, light brown robes. Who's the only one with the black robe in the prequels? It's Anakin.
Right.
So it's like, it's just, it's very fitting that Luke also has the black robes. I just love that. And then especially too, I fucking love his green lightsaber. It's just, you obviously knew you had to get.
I feel like green is more synonymous with Luke now than blue.
I forget, like, again, there's some, like, nerd shit out there that says how,
like, the crystals and everything.
The crystals determine some type of Jedi mind,
I think.
No, Kyle, you're not a nerd. We're all Star Wars nerds, okay? But yeah, there's something about it, like, I don't know what it represents. I couldn't tell you. I don't dive deep into that
In
stuff.
DC Comics, it would represent willpower.
Yeah, right.
But I like
it
Return of the Jedi. It does,
and it's great too how it's like revealed when they're on the when they're at the Sarlacc pit.
Yeah, it pops out of R2D2,
shoots up, and he just lights you. Like, holy shit! It's a new lightsaber.
I will say, even though this is my favorite Star Wars movie, I think I'm going to start off with a con of this movie.
Wow, I never thought I'd hear you say that.
Well, because it's like it's towards the beginning of the movie. Right. Boba Fett, where? And then he falls into the Sarlacc pit. Yeah. Oh my god, that's the one thing I'll give you about this movie. It's like they just did Boba Fett dirty.
They did
at the beginning.
Well, right, like I said, he was just such a I don't know. I'm not like he clearly, but he was like underwhelming in Empire Strikes Back, but like not really. But he was such like a badass bounty hunter. Like he freaking tracked down Han Solo. Like all those other bounty hunters failed. He didn't. When they went out with the trash compactor and all the stuff floating away, it's like you see his ship falling.
Yeah, you see Boba Fett following.
And you're like, and then when Luke's following them, he almost takes his head off with his ZE-3. Like, my God! And then it's like just to kind of do him dirty like that, and it's like it's funny in a way, like Boba Fett, where it's funny because the other thing too we didn't even talk about. I love how the only one that can understand Chewie is Han. Like, it's just. It's something that's like a very well needed like comedic relief, but yeah, that pissed me off a lot. And it's like, again, he didn't die because he survived. So whatever. I'm kind of happy with that he didn't die.
The books and the video games and the TV shows.
Because you know what, at least they didn't. In my opinion, he didn't die either. He didn't get killed off because he's fucking a badass.
Sarlacc couldn't digest his armor, so it spit him out.
But yeah, so that kind of, I think, and I don't think we're alone with that. I feel like people at the time too were probably like annoyed because, right, like you see Boba Fett a lot in the beginning here, like he's gearing up, he's gonna be like another villain here. Yeah. Like he's gonna have some type of payoff more or less.
I feel like he could have probably played a more prominent role in Jedi.
Yeah,
and even if he doesn't help the Empire.
Right.
I'm sure his interests could align somewhat parallel with the Empire in terms of getting the rebels and Han Solo.
The Book of Boba Fett's kind of looking like to be like he knew how corrupt Jabba was and like he could run that Empire better. Who knows? Maybe he like I don't want to say joined Han Solo and them, but kind of was like like another scoundrel kind of fighting against the Empire to kind of have his own freedom and stuff. Yeah. Like I don't know that or help them at the end when they're trying to blow up the second Death Star. Which again, I don't hate, but it is somewhat kind of lazy that they'll like let's build another Death Star.
Let's just do the Death Star again. It was so good the first time. Let's do it second time.
Instead of shooting something, they can fly in a trench and friggin' blow it up. They don't have to shoot down a trench. They fly in it. And it's like, it looks cool on screen. It was great, and it's really like tense that scene. You're like, are they gonna get out of there? And it's like, but it just felt kind of lazy.
I like Return of the Jedi. Because it's a culmination of Luke Skywalker's story arc and Darth Vader's story arc. And I think that those two, for me personally, while they're not my favorite characters in Star Wars, I think they're the most compelling.
For sure.
And, I mean, we talked about this Luke Skywalker character development to death. But, I mean, that's where it really comes to fruition that he is the embodiment of the balance between light and dark. And he knows how to walk that line. And even with Darth Vader... You start the trilogy in A New Hope, and he's this ultra imperialistic commander that will do anything for the Empire, to realizing not quite the error of his ways and his actions, but realizing that there might be more to... It's going to sound like a Hallmark movie like my mother watches, but there's maybe more to life than conquering the universe.
Right.
And that to have this familial connection and this legacy that you leave behind with your children, that might be the more important thing than having people around the galaxy fear your name. Maybe your name and your legacy and your honor should be something that is more revered than feared. And I think he realizes that when Luke is getting zapped and he's like, all right, screw you, Emperor, down the pit. And he throws him down there. I love that shot of the Emperor like falling with the lightning coming from his fingers, and he can't do anything about it. But then again, he didn't die either because the sequels suck. Jesus. But I think that, I mean, for me, I think I like to think of myself as a writer before anything else, and the writing in this movie with the characters I think is top notch.
Oh yeah. Well, that's that was my favorite part of Return of the Jedi is their father-son dynamic throughout, and it's really like I had like Luke never giving up on him, but in a weird way it's like Darth Vader kind of didn't give up on Luke when you think of it, like because Luke says to him, he's like, you couldn't bring yourself to kill me on Bespin, and you're not going to kill me now, and that's true. It's like Darth Vader obviously could have freaking cut his head off if he wanted, but he didn't, because he obviously knew it was his son.
He also didn't need to tell him that he was his son.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, that's a good point. This is very, like, you don't really know why he did that other than just, I think, for the pure, holy shit, that's his father. And then you just see in he's like, no, it's not true. Yeah. Like his, inevitable realization of, oh, shit, this is true. But yeah, it's just, that's like the, the best part. And like you were saying in the last, when we talked about Empire in the last video, Vader's kind of like his last mentor in a weird way.
Yeah. Not
that he looks up to him as a mentor, but he knows it's his father. Obi-Wan's dead at this point. Yoda's dead. Again, he like respects Han Solo, but he couldn't like kind of be that lifestyle. Like he's a Jedi now.
Right.
Like he's selfless. He's only helps others, which again, Han's becomes selfless, but it's like he's not in it for any selfish reasons. Darth Vader's sort of his like last obstacle. Of course, the Emperor is the main obstacle, but Darth Vader's more important to him, I think, than kind of even ending the war when you think of it.
For sure.
And yeah, it's just like you said, the writing, unbelievable how they ended it. I'm so happy they ended it the way they did.
Kind of like a cheesy, feel-good ending for me. Usually I don't like those kind of things, but in this situation, I let it slide. Though.
Darth Vader literally redeems himself, and it's not like all's forgiven. All the younglings he killed, like I think he's still going to hell. But
oh yeah, definitely.
but
what does Han Solo say?
And I'll see you in hell.
There you go.
Oh yeah, that's a great. He has so many funny one-liners. My God. He does. But yeah, it's a great wrap up to such a great trilogy. The Ewoks, a lot of people shit on. Like, I don't really mind them.
That was going to be my next point. I was going to say, we got to talk about the Ewoks before we wrap this up.
I don't really mind them. Like, it's kind of funny.
I love the Ewoks.
I do get the point how... I understand the point. It's like, how do these little furry animals with sticks and rocks defeat, the frickin' galaxies?
It's guerrilla warfare. It's guerrilla warfare.
But, no, but my counter to that is like, okay, we've already established how pointless the stormtroopers are and how pathetic they are and how they can never shoot something, and like at that point you already know, like,
I mean, yeah, okay, but it's the point of the Empire's greatest army, or excuse me, the galaxy's greatest army goes to this like ragtag no-name planet of Endor where these little teddy bear monkeys just beat the crap out of them because it doesn't matter how highly trained you are. If you don't know some sort of foreign fighting style that these things are coming at you with, you're screwed. And I love that the Ewoks, like these no-name animals on some planet in the middle of nowhere, absolutely stomped.
Planet's a moon.
Okay, fine. On a moon in the middle of nowhere, absolutely stomp the stormtroopers.
Yeah, it's funny.
And I mean, I know we've seen Jedi in prequels, original, and sequels rip through stormtroopers like they're nothing. But to see the Ewoks do it, I think, is something else totally.
It's funny. It's like you're like laughing in it at like them getting stoned to death literally by these things. Like it's like a funny, like, holy shit.
But also when they make C-3PO their king because he's like made out of gold or something, and he's like, excuse me, Ewoks, can you free my friends, please?
Yeah,
because they're gonna eat they're gonna eat them. They're gonna roast them on fire.
Cook them, for them.
And they're like, no, can you cook the stormtroopers, please? Not my friends.
Yeah. The other thing that's so funny too is because it's like I don't even know if we gotta like sit down and watch all the Family Guy Star Wars because they just point out like the kind of stupidity in some of these.
Well, that's Family Guy's job,
and just rip apart them. But it's like Han Solo like always kind of like shits on C-3PO throughout the original trilogy, and it's like really funny. He's like always like, shut him off, he's so annoying, like shut up, never tell me the odds and all that. And then like he's like, why don't you tell them, like when they're on Endor? Yeah, and it's so funny. Like I always laugh my ass off because it's like C-3PO is like so fucking innocent. Like all he tries to do is like help and obey.
He's so naive.
Right, he's so naive, and he's just trying to help, and Han Solo's just such a dick to him. It's just funny. I don't know. The whole Endor scene I love. Like I understand some of the gripes with it.
The Lego Star Wars levels were living hell on Endor.
Oh yeah.
But movie wise, I think the Ewoks just, not even in their warfare, but in their culture and their living, at least the parts that we explore, even at the end when they're having the big party,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because the rebels won, the Empire's gone. But I think that it's like it's such an awesome dichotomy and difference between like the highly civilized people that we've been seeing, and just to have it end on the Ewoks. It's just like it's just an expansion of the galaxy, because you're saying like, yeah, you know, the galaxy's got you know, Bespin. It's got, you know, the drug lord Jabba with all his lackeys and everything. You've got even the cities on Tatooine. But then you have places like Endor that are, you know, by comparison, uncivilized, more or less.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point, and kind of like a minor thing, but I always love, like, one of my favorite scenes in the trilogy is like the speeder chase on Endor.
Yeah.
I think that's such a well shot,
I don't think there's very much score in that scene either. It's all just like so speeder sounds too, and it's blasters.
Yeah, especially like when Luke just fucking lights this thing up and just cuts it, like times it perfectly. It's just such, again, just pure badassery in this one with Luke. It is like so needed, because obviously you want, like, he had to transition, you know, somewhat.
Yeah,
and kind of the assumption is he probably at one in between Empire and Return of the Jedi like went back to Dagobah to sort of.
Well, he didn't he, to
continue his training.
Meet Yoda.
I don't know, because there's weird dialogue in Return of the Jedi. He's like, your training's complete now, or something. You come back, or because he says, I've come back to complete my training. You can't die, and so I think he went back at some point, or sort of trained himself. But either way, he definitely developed in that sense.
Yeah, he's a great character. I mean, Star Wars is full of a lot of great characters, but Star Wars just the original trilogy's masterclass cinema in and of itself.
It is, and you know what I think makes it so great, right, is, yes, George Lucas oversaw everything, probably had a lot of the final decisions, final say, but he only directed A New Hope.
Exactly.
Irvin Kershner did episode The Empire Strikes Back, and Richard Marquand did Return of the Jedi, so it's like, I think it was kind of needed to have other people's, you know, thoughts and ideas and their sort of visions.
Well, they tried to do that with the sequels, and look how that turned out.
Yeah, but the thing that with the sequel, it was such a it was way more of a disconnect, because you have J.J. Abrams take, obviously, with The Force Awakens, right, and then you have Rian Johnson with Return The Last Jedi, and it's just like you can just tell it's two different people's like takes in their what they think Star Wars, how it should go, and it's just there's no fucking cohesiveness at all. It's just it was a mess, obviously.
We'll talk about that another time.
And then, like, the prequels are completely different, because George Lucas directed all three, and that was, like, I think George Lucas, seriously, like, likes the prequels better than the original trilogy. Because,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Because he, like, did everything. He always wanted to do that. You know, and again, especially at that time, they had the CGI to do what he wanted, and, you know.
Yeah, because Jar Jar Binks looked so real.
My point, you know, is just, like, I think that's why the original trilogy is so great, because it's just so much better collaboration and stuff. Obviously, it was, you know, all agreed upon by Lucas and stuff. He oversaw it, but it's great to see other people's thoughts and visions, and, you know, that's how discussion generates ideas, which create, you know, so many opportunities for great things to happen, and that's clearly, you know, what was done with the original trilogy. So I think that in and of itself, besides them just being great, you know, films, it differentiates himself from the rest of the genre in a good way.
I agree. Go watch Star Wars.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a wrap. Again, I go back and I'll see anything Star Wars that comes out. It's just enjoyable to me. It's a great escape. It's such a great expansive universe. There's so much content that's been created from this. Just like the thought too of how Fox Studios like didn't think this would be successful, and George Lucas is just like fucking throwing money at them, like, dude, like, thank you for letting me keep all the merchandising rights, because again, like, that's how
that guy has made more money than anyone ever needs.
So it's like, I'm sure Fox just still is kicking themselves in the fucking ass for not, you know, obtaining all the rights, or most of the rights, but
sucks, you know, for them.
Live and learn, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you know, as always, thank you guys for listening. As we said, we'll definitely, you know, continue to talk about Star Wars. You know, we'll probably do a prequel episode and then a sequel episode, and then, still and talk about the shows and different things, because it is something we both love. I think, me a little bit more so than you, but you still...
Oh, definitely.
You still enjoy it, obviously.
I like Star Wars.
It's great discussion, and yeah.
I mean, that's it for the Star Wars original trilogy. On YouTube, in the descriptions, I put yours and mine letterbox accounts where we rate and review movies. It's not always like super extensive, but if you want to keep up on it, go check that out.
Yeah.
Have a discussion in the comments, man. Tell us what your favorite Star Wars movies are. Tell us, what you think of Star Wars, Luke Skywalker. Yeah, tell your friends, tell your grandma, tell your mailman. Your
talking to you, Aiden.
Wow. Okay. But yeah, tell everyone. Share it. Facebook, Instagram, MySpace, whatever you feel like.
AIM, direct messenger.
Yeah, AOL.
AOL.
Go for it. We're not exclusive here. So thanks for listening. Catch us in the next one. Not quite sure what it's going to be yet, but we'll figure it out down the line. See you later.